Welcome, everyone. I'd like to have you join us for Feed Forward with Dr. Patrick Dempsey. We have this being recorded for you, and we welcome you to participate in the chat with any questions that you have. We're so glad that you've joined us. Go ahead, Dr. Dempsey.
All right, thank you so much for the introduction. Nice to see so many folks here, or see cameras off with so many folks. No problem. Just feel like a teacher doing a Zoom class. No one's actually paying attention. So fine. So thanks for taking the time though. Yes, I've got this first section of what am I doing with my life. I think that's sort of like we've all picked to be at a webinar on Friday. What are we doing with our lives? But quality matters. That's why we're here. So I was asked to do this presentation. I gave it a number of years ago, and I've since updated it. And I'm going to share this whole page with you at the end, because there's a lot of practical stuff in here. And that's what this session is really hopefully aimed to be, super practical. So it's going to be a ton of info, but it's going to be immediately applicable. And I do need you all, like Katie has started to chat, and Susan has started to chat in the chat box so we can have a dialogue throughout. So I'm going to get started here. So this is what we'll see. So these drop downs will keep us organized instead of just slides. I'm moving on from slides. It was a life choice I've made. But we'll start with this presentation. Like why even this presentation? And there's a certain paradox when it comes to feedback, that by design, feedback is meant to help students improve their work after they submit it. I mean, I know that's obvious, and I'm sure we've thought about it, and I know informative assessment, that is the point. But to the extent that a ton of our jobs are giving students feedback that they won't do anything with, that's a lot of where this presentation comes from. And also just a little context, a few years ago, when I was at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, and this is like an inside joke. They always say it's better to be from Johns Hopkins than at Johns Hopkins. Just carries that cachet, right? You've moved on to greener pastures. And we were starting up their PMBA, their MBA program online. And it was all about enrollment. And we were driving enrollment. We had like 120 students in a section, graduate students. And my role was interesting. I was like part of the instructional design team, but I was also a support for students and a support for faculty. So I did a ton of the grading in the courses. And one semester I had 11 sections of up to 120 students in each section. And I was really giving all the feedback to the students. And it was a lot of work. And so I realized that I could continue giving the same feedback to these 100 some odd students in each class, or I could try to understand what was going wrong, what they weren't getting right, and create instructions and create experiences that set them up for success the first time. And Feed Forward is my concept. I think it came out of some management concept that I think that I learned when we were building up that program. But it really dawned on me that if I did this well, my job would be significantly easier. And it did get easier. Every semester, I continued to improve assignments, and I was able to provide less and less feedback on assignments, and students were much more successful because I was setting them up with some feed forward. So that's the context of what we're getting into. And I'd love to know what motivated you to attend today's session in the chat, and then what you're hoping to get out of our time together. It doesn't really matter what you say, because I'm going to present what I present, but I would love to know. Excellent. How to give good feedback for students. All right, we definitely have some examples up front with you there. Yes. Definitely work smarter. It's a little harder on the front end, I will say, but not on the back end. Yeah, workload is going to be a big one, Bo. That's really what it's all about. Again, it's a little bit heavier on the front end. Large sections, I'm glad I gave that context. This came out of really, to me, 120 is a really large section. And, you know, it was so annoying to give the same feedback over and over again. It's a time suck for sure. Course design, this is definitely mostly what it's about, Elizabeth. So thank you for that. Definitely tons of practical suggestions. Yep, they're never going to use it. So how do we get them to do it right the first time? Thank you. Smarter and harder. Great. These are awesome. So I'm hitting all of these. Workload management is the very last thing we're actually it's just going to be the bow on it, Leah. So, is it Leah? Did I say that wrong? So that's our first section. So these are our objectives. We're going to look at where am I spending my feedback time, a little bit more context, some definitions, and then where can I improve? How do I find out where I can improve? And then what are some fun ways, and someone mentioned that in the chat, what are some fun ways to actually give examples and this feed forward in practice? Thank you. I look at the names and I started pronouncing it and I realized maybe I'm getting this wrong. So I will ask for a little bit more chat. So this is basically how these sections will go, so you understand them. This share your experiences is me asking you for some info in the chat. Try some things, are either going to be some definitions or some activities that you can do in your own class. And again, I'm going to share this page with you at the end, and you can just copy and paste this text, share it with anyone you want. And then we'll have this sort of decision point. What are we going to do with this information? So in turn, if we could deal with these questions, if you're a teacher, this is obviously, I know we have some folks in other roles, but what % amount of your teaching time is spent giving feedback? A lot. And is that in an online or face-to-face? Too much? That's definitely both, yeah. And it really is. I mean, I do feel like it's a huge value proposition for us to not necessarily feedback, because I'm sort of saying we're giving feedback after it's too late. But that interaction with students, that development, right? We're the experts. We're trying to help them develop. So what challenges, and I know we've talked a little bit about these, what challenges do you experience with feedback? This is not just challenges of giving feedback. This is intentionally a broader question. What challenges do you experience with feedback? Students don't care. Okay, thank you for that. That helps frame some of these. Yep. Yeah, students don't, are they reading it? Are they incorporating it? Is it something that would even be impactful from them from tomorrow? That's exactly right. So performing for some specific thing that like a template when you're really looking for other attributes to be experienced. Yeah. And Angie, I think a lot of this is going to be helpful for you in your work as an ID. And that's my primary work. I do teach, but my primary work is as an ID. Yes, and we're going to get this to this punitive point for sure. So let's just quickly, and we'll get into some content that experiences the challenges students have. And I know we've touched on them a little bit here. Susan, that is great. I should say, I guess the chat isn't captured in the when this goes back out. So it says students assume to view copious feedback as the sign of a good course, but they generally fail to accept their role in it. I love that, because I definitely get that feedback. I get in the evaluations, he gives a lot of feedback, but then you don't actually see them doing anything with it. That is brilliant. So now we have that in posterity. Right, Erica, that is a really good point. Necessarily, right? We're moving on to the next module. And that's it. So you turned it in Sunday, you got your feedback, well, maybe earlier in the week, maybe next week. Yeah, tons of good stuff there. So we all are equally challenged by feedback. I love that. So this is a little bit more context setting. I'm gonna differentiate types of feedback, and then we'll look at ways we can analyze the feedback that we give. And definitely understanding the feedback is a huge challenge. So, and this was a point that someone made. Generally, feedback ranges from you're wrong, fix it, that's that punitive mindset, to you're amazing, what's next. So we have this sort of spectrum. And I wanted to, let me zoom in just a touch. These are a little smaller. Differentiate in hard disciplines, this idea of like you're wrong, fix it, to you're amazing, what's next, in harder disciplines, and then softer disciplines. And again, I'm going to share this, so this is not meant to us like consume all this right now, but generally you're moving from like a corrective mindset to actually giving personalized insights. So corrective is just wrong, directive is you're wrong, but here's how you might correct, might do better. Development is really getting personal with the person. And then the personal is they're really probably successful and you know a lot about them because you're not spending a ton of time correcting and directing. And you're able to really connect on what I think is that most meaningful level of taking that personal interest in the students. And let me open up the soft disciplines one also, and then ask where most of us find ourselves. So we're moving from compliance again to personalized insights. This is, hey, the paper was due on Sunday. Expectations is often, hey, you didn't read the rubric, right? I put this stuff in the rubric and I didn't see you apply. You should have had 3 sources or whatever it might be. And then we start tying it back to content, and then we start tying it to the person and their performance. Offhand, where would you say most of your feedback tends to be? Is it more in the you're wrong, fix it, let's call that 1, and then 5, you're amazing, what's next? Let's give those a number in the chat. 1, you're wrong, fix it, to 5, you're amazing, what's next? And if you want to indicate if you're in a soft or hard discipline, because we do have a lot of 1s, and I know the corrective is a little bit probably more fashionable and appropriate there. So yeah, so we're spending a lot of time as a group sort of moving students, hoping to move students with our feedback to what I would think we would all want to do in these higher levels. So that's good. And again, this is where this came out of. This was my context. I was getting so much 1 and 2 level feedback, and I'm like, well, why is no one doing this right? And I was like, well, the instructions weren't clear. So and thank you, by the way, for all your engagement in that chat. So I'm going to leave you with these, of course, ways that you can do this yourself. So you have a good idea of where you are, but if you wanted to find out a little bit more specifically, here's a little chart for you. And I won't show both of them because they're just different words on the top. But if you're in the hard discipline, take 5 students and think about how much time you spent giving them this type of feedback. It wouldn't take long and you're already grading. And it might be interesting to see, and we'll talk in some other of these exercises, some themes that are coming up when we're giving this feedback. But this is an easy manual process for us to think about identifying where we are, and that way we know where we want to go. And I have also this robots one. So if you're an AI user, what you can do at the end of this session when you get this is just copy this in. I use them myself, so you can, they work. So you can just copy them into GPT or whatever you use. And here's some feedback I gave on this assignment, put in the description and put in the feedback, and then ask it to complete this table. And it'll tell you where your feedback is actually residing. So that'll be a little bit of a quicker way for you to determine. So the big idea here was there's these different types of feedback. As a group, we found ourselves probably, if I had to guess, at the 2 or 3 range. And we want to move towards that 5. We want students probably doing it right the first time. And so that any of our feedback time can be more personalized, at least more developmental as opposed to more punitive. So can have some comments here. Students submit work that requires us to provide substantial feedback to support them meeting the objectives. I think one of two things can be true. One is they can't do it, or the other is that they weren't ready. And I'll say, but they weren't prepared to submit it. Another way I say this is, if you have to give a ton of grades that aren't 100, maybe students submitted their work too soon. Maybe they didn't have enough opportunity to refine their work before it came to you. And that could be for a lot of reasons. And we're going to look at some ways to identify what those reasons might be. But it's really on us, right? Like if the students are doing what they're doing, and if we haven't prepared them to do different, then it really is, we're just continuing to make this decision to give this level this 2 or 3 level feedback. So that's the first step. Where are we spending our time, and how do we understand that? And we already have a good pulse on it. So that's good. So let's get some feedback on this. What are your feedback routines? Here we're going to look at some opportunities for improvement. So first question, how often do you find yourself giving the same feedback to multiple students on the same assignment during a semester? Yeah, all the time, very, very often. I teach educational research, so I have to teach APA. Oh, there it is. Jinx. Total jinx. It's brutal, right? Okay, so now in my experience that I was sharing, I had that experience where I was giving some of the same feedback and I tried to do something about it, but it takes a lot of work. I mean, my job was not to teach the course and all this. I was in the instructional design team, so I was actually improving the assignment for myself. A lot of us don't have the time to do that if you're teaching. How often do you find yourself then giving the same feedback across on that same assignment, but every time the course runs? So in fall you did it, in spring you did it, in fall you do it again, same sort of feedback. Students are making the same errors. Yes, AI is great for citations. It certainly makes it easier for me. If they're not doing it, I'm just going to run it through. So how often from semester to semester are you given the same feedback? Yeah, Karen, and that's going to be the idea of this session is we're going to try to find the ways that it's happening all the time, and we're going to chip away at it, right? We're not going to completely eliminate it. And when we make changes, we're going to find new opportunities for feedback, that we have to give different types of feedback. So with that question, just final thoughts, and then we'll get into some content. What are some things that you've done to chip away at it? Casey, that's going to be great. We'll put a pin in that because we're going to talk about different levels of examples that we can give that I think are really helpful. That's going to be in the next section, annotate and ABC. Yeah, so clarifying instructions. Obviously, exam questions are huge if they keep getting those. I mean, we have a ton of, and I'm not going to get too much into like the data analytics because obviously in a quiz we know we can all look that up. Those are obvious, so I don't really cover that. Yeah, constantly just like providing more support, right? Clarifying. And so a lot of what we're going to see are some activities to help us understand what aspects of the instructions we should actually try to clarify. So we have 4 different things that we can do here this is more getting to the root of the problem. And the first 2 are bigger picture, and then the last 2 are a bit more practical. Yeah, Andrea, great. I have that. We have a tip like that coming up also, and how do I move from feedback to feed forward? So thank you for that. So this first one is user personas. This really helps if you do this. You don't have to do the full activity. If you know about these in other contexts, you just think about the types of students that are often in your class, and then you talk about like their demographics, their behavior, their motivation, goals, and their challenges. And I'll show a completed example here. The names aren't important, so I'll show these other ones. And this was for this educational psychology research course that I teach. And so we learn a little bit about this student that's probably in the course. This was GPT produced. Their goals for being in the course, some challenges they might have, and what are their preferences. And you start thinking about, wow, like that's probably true. Maybe this person doesn't have a ton of background, or they don't have a ton of time. So this is just, I am using Notion. It's just a document platform. And you're all going to have access to it if you want. It'll make you, you can either view it or sign up for an app. I don't work for them, but we use it in our team. So this is user persona is just an easy way to kind of, for the first time, maybe think about who's in your class differently. You could take actual students and do this, or just have GPT do it. And again, if you want to do it yourself for a few students, I have a template for you. And if you want to ask GPT to do it, or any other AI prompt tool, I have that prompt already for you, just to make it really easy. So I think that's a really good way to start. The first time you do this, I know you know who's in your class, but when you start really thinking about their goals and challenges, that starts to maybe surface some things that you hadn't thought about before. And that really folds into this next one, which is user journey mapping. And this is in product and customer experience management. But I took this from an actual course. And again, I have the human generated version and the GPT version. And so they have to complete a quiz, they're doing a health check, and they're reading. And so what are the goals? What are the students' goals with these things? What are they feeling when they come to them? And then how can I improve these things? And again, this is bigger picture. This wasn't chipping away at the assignment instructions. This is more like what's going on in my course. And I just love this idea. I mean, you don't have to do it every time. Like if you did a module, you know enough about this practice. And it's changed. When I used to give this presentation, I did it, and I came to, I think it was a video that was in a class that I loved. I thought it was great. It was me. I was, I was introducing the concepts. I thought it was so important. And then I realized the student, wants to get information on the course. I didn't give any context of what was in the video. I didn't tell them how long it was. I didn't tell them what they were going to get out of it. And then I look, 4 months into the course, and why are people not looking at my videos anymore? So it really does help change what you put into your course when you think about what students are going to get out of it when they interact with it. And again, I give you a simple table for that, and then a prompt. If you just want to, you can just copy your stuff out of Canvas, just like do a total grab of the text, Blackboard or Moodle, whatever you're using, Brightspace, and then just put it in there. So those are bigger picture, like who's in my class, and then what are they experiencing when they interact with some stuff. That's as big as picture as we're going to get. We're going to get very practical from here. So evaluating the effectiveness of instructions. And the first example I have is this prompt for GPT. So I have a completed assignment. I'm looking to understand how the instructions might have been interpreted. Based on the content, generate a set of instructions. So we don't give GPT the instructions, we give it a completed assignment, and then we compare the set of instructions that it creates to the set of instructions that we actually have. And so this is just, I love this one. I think it's great. It's so awesome. You can also do this. I know we have some instructional designers in the house. If you want to help folks really talk about objectives in the class, you can, and that alignment, you can ask it to say, what do you think the objectives for this assignment were? And really fun use there. Yeah, thank you. I get excited about that one. And you can manually do it, but who wants to do that anymore? But yeah, you can manually do it. You can say, okay, this is just an example of an element, like a paper that maybe has these elements. You can write in the purpose. You can say, get a couple examples from student submissions, and then say, well, what's different? I wanted them to do this, and 3 students did this. Why might that be? What are some themes that are happening? Glad this is helpful. So that was more of generally the softer disciplines. On the harder disciplines, very similar thing. So maybe you say, this is what the student answered. This was the problem. Let's identify areas that they might be struggling with. And in the harder, this works for both disciplines. I think of it a little bit in the harder because a lot of what they're struggling with is prerequisite knowledge that we might not always think about because it's not the course we teach. So doing this with a quantitative, this analyze for students with a quantitative stuff can really help unearth what are the other supports that students might need to be successful at this assignment. And again, of course, giving you the simple template. I do realize I talk fast. Sorry, but it's all here. You're going to get all this. So yeah, so this is our decision at this point. We can keep the course the same and keep giving the same feedback, or we can make some changes. And so the next section is going to be about finding some ways to do different things to make those changes. So yeah, so we evaluated where we're spending our time. We've looked for areas where students might be struggling or that might be causing student struggles. And now we're going to get into some things to change our workloads. So here's a question. You can be honest or not. How many on average, how many days after an activity do you return feedback to your students? This is a judgment-free zone. We have anywhere from 24 hours to 7 to 10 days, and it depends on the scope of the assignment, the level of feedback we're giving, the number of students that are in the course. And so to Erica's point earlier, that 7 to 10 days, right? And if you're teaching online or in a lot of contexts, right, we've moved on past that content. So that's particularly tricky. And there was that person mentioned that ownership, that's Susan, about them, students participating in the feedback process. So after that 10 days, that's a big onus for them to kind of participate in that. So let's ask the next question. How much feedback do you think they actually apply? That's good. I would take 10%. Yeah, so building more of the formative side, right? Then it's like necessary. And I do want to distinguish, obviously, when you're doing formative assessments, a lot of these practices that we'll get into can work for that, but typically we're talking about turning in that assignment, that more summative piece. And then, so very good. That's very good. Janelle's got a higher percentage. So what effect size would you like your feedback or feed-forward practices to have on student performance? So basically anywhere like from none, well, no, who would say that, but what would you shoot for? Like if you could have your way, right? What do you want to have happen? What's reasonable, I should say, for you? If you're going to put in this time and effort, how much would you like it to change the student performance? My feedback from this session is the next time I do this session, only do 2 questions per drop down, but that's all right. Just using data here. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you. Guilts everyone into saying things. 100, right? Like if I'm going to put in the effort, I think it's that idea. Like this is a group effort here. Probably small in reality. So some things that folks already mentioned, we're going to find here. I also feel like when you're sharing your screen and like you get a notification on some other app, like there's just like, for me, I'm always uneasy. Like I can't wait to see what's in there for the person. Like they're getting emails and I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're going to open up after. Sorry, that's just a tangent. All right, let's try some things. So the first most obvious thing is we can revise the instructions. And we talked to some folks about that. I explain this when I'm working with instructors a lot. If you tell students what to do, they'll do it. I always feel like if you told students to do like 100 push-ups and video themselves, they would do it. They might not know why they're doing it. But if we're really clear about it, often they will do it. And I do have a prompt for you. We love using emojis. I love using emojis. My team mocks me because I love them, but the kids love them these days. So if you want to use a prompt, you could say revise these instructions to make them clearer, and you can use this format. Formatting instructions is probably and putting steps into actual steps is probably the #1 thing that you can do. We use, I should capital B, Bloom's verbs to start each step. We do ask questions sometimes, but we generally will say, synthesize, analyze. Often we'll have a explainer on what those terms mean and how they can make sense of them when completing an assignment. But revising instructions. Here is a before. So just came from an instructor's course. You can see enough that's like, what would you do there? And then after, this is what it turned into. I feel pretty strongly that students are going to perform significantly better on this assignment. And it took you no time. Like that actual example. So thank you, Uriel, for that. Wow. Because it's huge. And it has the emojis. Come on. Thank you. Annotate and ABC. I wish I was better at names. Oh, come on now. It's Casey. Had this idea of the different examples. So this is a really fun way to do it. So the zone of proximal development, right? Vygotsky saying like students need to be in where they just can't do it and they, with a little help, can do it. So one problem with providing A models only is that students don't have the skills to do A-level work. So the idea is that we provide models of C's, B's, and A's, because a C and a B is probably going to be much more aligned with a student's performance. And so what you end up doing is you create, this is again a prompt for you to put in, create 3 annotated examples of this assignment on blank for the audience. And you get something like this, and you can share this with students. So this was an example of like cognitive load and online learning for an online discussion was the example. And so a lot of folks are going to start out here, and it tells you exactly there's a lack of depth. You're using informal language. So this is a really fun way to provide multiple examples, multiple exemplars, even at different levels. And students could then potentially work through each of those levels as they complete. Again, an A example is great, an annotated A example is better, but these different levels is really effective. Worked examples, of course, we know are more effective than having students work through problems on their own. This is more on that quantitative side. Yes, the C example is great assignment. This actually is a great assignment. And one thing that we do, and thank you, not trying to steal your ideas, Casey, you're allowed to have great ideas. Is give those examples and say which one's the A, which one's the B, which one's the C, and why do you think that? Also another great way to do it. So worked examples, again, giving you a prompt, generate a detailed step-by-step worked example. And this is for solving quadratic equations. I don't remember what that is, to be honest with you. But these sorts of things, again, I imagine if you're in the discipline, you understand this, but it's not just quantitative. You can also do worked examples of more of the qualitative stuff, putting together an introductory paragraph, putting together an APA citation. So you can have these step-by-step instructions. Elaborated feedback. This is just knowledge for you. So generally, this was from, I was honestly too lazy to put in the citation, but this is from a very recent meta-analysis of feedback. And just looking at the different types of feedback that are available and the different effect sizes that they have. So elaborated feedback, where students receive detailed comments explaining why their question is right or wrong and metacognitive hints of how to improve, is the most effective across all domains. And so you can look at these other ones. Sometimes if you say you got it right or wrong, I had always done answer until correct and never elaborated feedback because I thought answer until correct was better, but apparently elaborated feedback is significantly better. So telling them if what the correct answer is also not as effective. So that's just a hint. If you're gonna give feedback, this is true qualitative and quantitative, help them understand the reasoning behind that feedback and what they might do with it. Mad Libs is one of my favorite things to do because I teach educational research and because I got tired of trying to teach people how to write in a scholarly way, which they're never going to do. We do this all the time for assignments, and obviously this is sort of meta level, so create a Mad Lib style for blank. And so this is like for an introductory, this is for the abstract, right? So introduce the topic broadly, prior research is demonstrated. And I tell students, don't change this because this is what you should write. This is what you would write if you were a scholar. But what you need to do is modify this part, discuss what's known about the relationship. So what I get the final papers for the courses, they're so good, right? And like, to me, I don't care. Like, I didn't have to teach the person to write like this. I don't know why people have to write like this. Yeah, it's so good. I don't know why people write like this. It's just the thing. Obviously, if you want to overturn that, then teach them to write a different way. But if you're trying to get them to teach in a particular genre, and writing is not maybe the focus of the course, this could be a good one for you. We are right on time here. The help playlist, someone who did it, who said TikTok before. This is the vision here. Just create like 3 60-second videos of the 3 most common mistakes students make in this video, on this assignment, or the 3 things students tend to do well on this video. On this assignment, it doesn't have to be a video, but you create a playlist. Call it a playlist. I know I'm not cool anymore, but trying to be cool is still the thing that I do. So calling it a playlist works, and the students watch it. And this last one, someone talked about managing workload. So this is something that I recommend everyone do, is to create for yourself like a feedback cycle. And I also often turn this into like a list for students, and to say, hey, I'm present in your course, and this ongoing, what is the RSI? Come on, someone put this in there. The regular
and
substantive
interaction.
Thank you, Barbara. Help them understand. So you're going to get a ton of feedback, feed forward in these instructions, and then you're going to take the quiz. And in the quiz, you're going to get that elaborated feedback. And I'm going to scaffold you through the instructions Monday through Wednesday as you're looking at that forum. And then when you post, you're going to get some responses from me. You're going to get some responses from your peers. So you're going to get a ton of feedback here. For the assignments, maybe you set up a few things. You set up super clear instructions. You set up that mistakes playlist, and you have the annotated examples. They're getting feedback you're present throughout the week. And then you think about, what am I actually going to do when the course starts? So I'll create this little video. I'll give them feedback within 72 hours. I'll respond to 3 posts a day for these 4 or 5 days. I'll make a little video for their weekend when they're doing their work. My context is mostly online. A graduate, so this is a format. And everyone knows, and you just keep it. And your workload then, because so much feed forward is happening here, your comments here are going to should tend to be more at that 4 and 5 level of where you want it to be, more that personalized insights. Whew. Great, we're done. What ideas from today's session do you intend to share, explore, and/or apply? Just a little recap for our time together. There are a lot. If you had to pick one, Katie, the thing that you loved. Yes. Great. Thank you. Yes, feedback. It's very good at giving feedback. You can put in your assignments and instructions, and you can also ask it like, hey, my students could probably do this on AI, so how do I make it a little bit more AI proof? Yeah, let me hit this right now. I have to move my camera a little bit. Let me publish this for you. You can see what I'm doing here. All right, now I can put that in the chat. I'm sorry about that. This should work. I have to test first. I want to make sure you don't see the rest of everything that I have. I'm not going to do it right here, but I will, give me a sec so I can do this. Very unprofessional. Should have done this before the session. Thank you. I'm posting it. Thank you all for participating. I think we're right on time, right, Barbara? Anyone can say anything now because we have 4 minutes left.
We sure are. I'll just say that you're welcome to unmute your microphone. That might be easier than just getting into the chat. Also, you can show yourself on camera if you so desire. We would love to see you. And yeah, we have a few minutes left.
Thank you. It was a great crowd. I saw Erica for a moment on my screen. It was brave enough. Share camera.
Oh, hi. My name is Obijit.
Thank
I'm a
you.
faculty in Computer Information Systems Department, and I really appreciate different examples and the platform that you use now to even to go with the presentation. So, and again, thanks to you for all that different approaches. So, I'm just have one question: that is there a way that can we have access to this the way you presented here? Because
Yes, I shared it. I'll share it again.
Yeah.
You can use this link in the chat, and it will bring you up. It's just a web page,
Sure.
and you can literally share anything you want. Love to, if you want to talk to your teaching and learning team and then pay me $500 to come chat, I'll do that. But if you don't, you can just use this information however you find beneficial.
Okay. Again, thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your talk.
Thank you. Thank you for the engagement. You all were awesome.
Hi, just a couple of comments. So I do a lot for a developing BSM program, and I love this idea for simulation debriefing because I'm involved also as the simulation technician for our very small program. And so I love this idea of using these, well, you used AI, but generating these templates for faculty as part of the debriefing process, because that's also part of our feedback. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, interesting. I guess that is, Angie, like broadly what we're talking about, right? Different ways to just provide meaningful, reflective opportunities or developmental opportunities. You were all great. You made my day. Thank you so much for being so active in the chat.
All right. I just want to say thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for an excellent presentation, Patrick. You gave us a lot to work with and think about. And so that is all we can ask. I'm going to go ahead and save the chat and stop the recording and wish all of you a really great day.